Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome wherever you are in the world and whatever time zone you are in. Welcome to my podcast, Unwind and Knit with me. My name is Lisa and I'm coming to you from Christchurch in New Zealand, which is the South Island of New Zealand. Welcome back if you are an existing viewer, thank you. And if you're a new viewer, welcome, hello, I hope you enjoy the content. Please subscribe and sit back and enjoy this. Today is Thursday the 5th of May and this is episode 19, which is really exciting. I've just ticked over 9 months of podcasting. I'm going into my 10th month. So episode 19, so it's pretty exciting and I'm pretty happy about that. If you're a new viewer, you can follow me on Instagram as Unwind and Knit with me, and we also have a Ravelry group called Unwind and Knit with me. And our challenge, is it a challenge or a knit along? We have a thread in the Ravelry community group called Challenges of 2022. And you're welcome to pop over onto that thread and just say hello and tell us about what your challenge is this year. And it could be anything from using more stash, buying less yarn. It could be knitting socks or your first bit of colour work. Anything that is new to you for 2022 with your wool craft, whether it's knitting or crochet. And every 3 months I draw a prize. So the next prize draw is due at the end of June. We had one at the end of March, and you stay in there. So if you're already in there and you can put more than 1 or 2 entries in that thread, and then you're in the draw for the next one, and we'll just keep accumulating to the end of the year. So yeah, please pop over there and say hello in the community thread. And also Instagram. And I think that's all I have to say for housekeeping. Yep, episode 19, Instagram, Ravelry, and let's just jump straight into to the knitting and the WIPs and the FOs. I'll start off with what I'm wearing. I have worn this before and it is one of my favourites. It fits well and it's comfortable. And this is the Miss Arena by Caitlin Hunter. There's the pattern there. And the colourways I have done is very similar to hers actually. But this is done in a 4-ply finger in weight yarn. I used the yarn from a local indie dyer here in Christchurch called Kiwiana. And I thought I'd wear this because I'm actually really keen to cast on another one. I saw Selma from Little Big Knits and she had one, and I think it was in blue and like a fuchsia pink in the Colorwork, and I'm really keen to cast on one in a similar colourway with the blue. So I don't know when, because if you know me, if you've been following me, you know that I'm always casting on something new, and I have a huge wish list of things that I want to cast on, but of course we are always restricted by time. But I loved this knit. I loved the fact that there was a bit of lace work, a bit of colour work, a bit of cable. It just had a little bit of everything, but it wasn't overly complicated. It was a well-written pattern that I could follow quite easily. I have in the body work, I'll just stand up and see if you can see it. I continued the lace work through to the body, and that is optional. So you can just work stocking stitch through the body, but I chose to do that bit of lace work through the body, and I really like it. And like I said, I'm really keen to cast on another one. So I have talked about this pattern for if you're new to colour work and you're just trying to build up your confidence a little bit with colour work. It's probably quite a nice easy one. You do have to carry the yarn and catch your floats, but it's a good pattern to maybe practice that on and just to learn that technique. It's yeah, I really like it. I love the fit of it. So for that reason, I really would like to cast on another one. So that's Miss Arena by Caitlin Hunter. I'll just mention too, I leave all the links below. So there's a description box, and if you click on that, it should drop down. And I leave all the links to any patterns that I talk about, or yarns, or podcasts. Yeah, everything is there. And you can also leave me questions or comments. And I do want to thank everyone that leaves me comments. I do read them all, and I do reply and respond to them all. And it's really exciting. I always feel really blessed to be part of this community, because it really is quite an amazing community. So yeah, if I will leave the links, but if there is something that I've forgotten or that I haven't been clear on, feel free to ask me a question or leave comments. Yep. And today I have an FO. It's always exciting when I have a finished object. If you've been following my Instagram, you would have seen it, because I did post a picture of it yesterday or the day before, a couple of days ago. But it's Ranunculus, and I'm pretty sure that all my viewers know this pattern. Midori Hiroshi, I think is the author. I will leave the link below, I'm not quite sure. I think that's right. I didn't pull the pattern out because I just assumed that everyone knows about Ranunculus. And here's my finished Ranunculus. It's blocked out beautifully, right down to the twisted rib at the bottom there. So that's it there. I have sewn on a wee tag. I often do that just so I know where the back and the front is. But yeah, super happy with how it come out, and I will talk about it because there were a few things that I had a couple of questions, and there was a few things I wanted to touch on. So that is my second Ranunculus. The first one I did in a 4-ply fingering weight, and it's quite a summery Ranunculus, and I did it with short sleeves. This one I have done, as you see, in long sleeves, and I've done in DK, a DK weight, which I wasn't sure about, because generally I don't knit a lot in DK because our climate, we have cold winters, but it's not that cold. And I think, and I know a lot of you ladies will appreciate what I'm saying, when you go through a certain age, it's just too hot. It's just too hot to wear DK weight. But that has been done on a 6mm needle. I've thrown it on the floor. But it's really light. Like, even to hold, it feels really light and airy. And to wear, it actually feels really light and airy. It doesn't feel like I'm closed in with a heavy DK weight jersey. So don't be put off by doing a DK weight. I'm really glad that I did it, because I wasn't, like I said, I haven't normally been a fan of the heavier weight yarns. I tend to always go towards fingering weight, but the 6mm needle really does make it quite airy. The yarn I used is from a local mill here in Christchurch, and it's 80% merino, 20% alpaca. So I do think that will drop a little bit and it'll grow a little bit, which I'll be really happy with. It does fit me well now, but I'll be happy if it sort of drops and drapes a little bit. And this is an undyed yarn. Now, most of you, my viewers, know that I'm in the process of starting up an online store, which I'll talk more about later on. So I tried to secure some of this yarn to be able to sell on the store, on my online store, because I really like it, and I thought there probably will be some viewers out there that will go, yeah, I want to knit that. I want one that looks like that. I was only able to secure 8 skeins. Now, that took me just over 3. I probably could have got it done with 3, but I would have had I probably would have lost about 1 inch on the ribbing. So to play it safe, I would do I would use 4 skeins. So this will go for sale on my online store next week when we open, but there will only be 8 available, so if you really want to do it, you may be able to jump on and grab yourself 4 skeins, and you'll be able to, if you want to replicate what I've done there. It is a beautiful yarn. My understanding is, and I think it's just a New Zealand problem, I'm not sure if it's a worldwide problem, but this year there's a shortage of alpaca, and it's got something to do with heavy rainfall that we had, and apparently you can't shear or clip alpacas when their wool is wet. Unlike sheep, sheep have lanolin and the water just rolls off. Alpaca has to be dry to shear, and so that's my understanding. If you do hear that there's a shortage of alpaca, and that's why I wasn't able to order any more of this, I could only get what they had. So there will be 8 skeins of that for sale. What I did want to talk about with Ranunculus is I did my first Ranunculus a couple of years ago, and there wasn't really sizing. I think there was like a one size fits all. And when I downloaded off Ravelry the Ranunculus to do this project, there was an update. So I did the update, and now there's a sizing range, so you can actually do small, medium, large, extra large, and the pattern seems a lot more clearer than the first time. So if you have got Ranunculus in your Ravelry library, make sure you do the update, because it was a bit clearer. So that was the first thing. And the other thing I wanted to mention was you cast on the neckline in 6mm needles. So the pattern calls for 5mm needles for the ribbing and the cuffs, and 6mm for the body. Well, I just thought because I was doing rib for the neckline that I would use my 5mm, and that's wrong. So I had to rip it back. Cast on in the 6mm and cast on very loosely. That was the other mistake I made and had to rip it back, is that my neckline was a bit too tight, and I don't like tight necklines. So just be aware of that. And the other thing, and I did mention this in my last podcast, is where you increase for the raglan, there's knit front back and knit back front, and I looked at it, went knit front back, yep, off I went, only to realise that it didn't look right. And when I looked at the pattern again, it was knit front back, knit back front. So it may just trip you up. It tripped me up because I just saw the KFB and thought, yep, I know what I'm doing, off I went. So I did have to rip that back. So they're the 2 things to watch out for, is cast on in the 6mm, and watch out for your knit front back and knit back front. But there will be more Ranunculuses in my wardrobe for sure. I don't know when, but I think, and I said this before, you can never have too many. They're just a really good wardrobe staple, that comfortable to wear, I like to wear, and I will cast on another one. I think that's all I had to say about the Ranunculus and what I'm wearing. And before I go on to my WIPs, I thought I'd just show you, if you've been following me on previous podcasts, I brought out my spinning wheel. My Ashford spinning wheel had been collecting dust for about 10 years, and I really was keen to spin again, just in a bit of spare time. But I hadn't spun for 10 years, and I wasn't too sure what my technique, how good my technique was going to be, and whether I probably needed to go and do maybe a couple of lessons just to get back into it. But anyway, I bit the bullet and I bought one of these. This is in a slightly different colourway, but that's 100 gram merino, hand dyed, and I got that from our local Spinners and Weavers Guild here in Christchurch. So I bought 100 grams and I divided it up and I spun it and yesterday I sat down and I got my 2 bobbins and I plied it together, and I thought I'd show you, because it's not perfect. It looks like it's hand spun, but I'll show you. So there are a few thick bits in there. Overall it's pretty even, but it's not, it would be a DK weight, and I was kind of aiming for a fingering weight. It feels beautiful and squishy. I love the way it's plied together. So there's blues and purples are the 2 main colours. But I'm pretty happy. It's not perfect, but I'm going to knit this into a beanie. That's what I decided I'd do, because it's squishy, and I just think it would be just beautiful in a beanie, and it's a single skein, so I can't really put it into anything too big. And I want to cast this on in the next couple of days, because I think it's the sort of thing that I could get done in just a couple of nights of knitting. So that's my first hand spun attempt in 10 years. Sit there. So, yay! And of course, when you finish one, it gives you permission to start another one. So I have got that other skein, but I was over at the tannery where the Spinners and Weavers Guild is. There's a couple of really good second-hand clothing stores there that my daughter likes to go to. She said, "Mum, come to the tannery," and I went, "Oh yes, please," because I knew that the Spinners and Weavers Guild was there. So I bought these 2 skeins. Now these are 70% merino, 30% silk, and you can see the silk in there. They're 50 gram each, and they're seriously soft. And I'm going to spin these 2 up, and I'm going to try to get it finer, and then I'm going to ply them together. So I'll have that barber pole effect with the dark and the light. So that's my next spinning project. I paid $15 each for these. So if you're in Christchurch or you're coming here on holidays, it's really, and you love hand spun weaving type things, it's really worth going out and seeing the shop out there. Wool yarn fibre. So I've never spun with silk. When I went there was a gentleman spinning, and I was talking to him, and what he was spinning was this blend, and I had a feel, and it just seemed a lot easier to to feed it through in finer pieces, if that makes sense. But it's my little spinning project. I'm really happy with that. Coffee time. It's only number 2 today, so I'm doing well. Right, now let's talk about my WIPs. The first WIP, super excited with this. So I've talked about, I follow Selma from Little Big Knits, and this is one of her patterns, and it's called the West Village skirt. Now, I've always wanted to knit a skirt, but never had the confidence to know how many to cast on or what sort of formula or pattern. And when I'd try to find patterns, I don't know, they just didn't appeal to me. They didn't, I don't know, they just didn't work for me. But what Selma has done there is she's given you a formula to knit a skirt. And basically how it works is I did my swatch, and I think I got 4 stitches per inch, and I measured my waist, and I'm not sure what my waist measurement was, and I don't know if I want to share it, but the measurement of my waist times 4 stitches, because that's how many stitches I had per inch, that's how many I cast on. And then you measure your largest section, which is your bottom and your hips, and you do the same thing. You get your measurement and times that by 4. And then the difference in the number is how many you need to cast on between your smallest point, which is your waist, and your largest point, which is your bottom and your hips. And that's what I did. And to be honest, when I started first reading how to calculate the formula, I thought, oh God, this is complicated, and I didn't know if I could get my head around it. But I just read through it a couple of times and I worked through the maths, and it really wasn't that complicated. And now I can happily talk about it and say, yep, get your waist measurement and times that by 4 or 5, however many stitches you got per inch. So I cast on my skirt, and I showed you this last week, but I have nearly finished. I could have finished this last night if I wanted a really late night, which I didn't. But I'm down to the bottom where I'm doing a 2x2 rib. I've got my stitches on cable here because I did just want to try it on again. But yep, so I've almost finished. What I do want to say, what I did, so over 8 inches I increased 4 stitches every 7th round. And like Selma says in the pattern, this isn't an exact science, so make sure you try it on as you go, and that's where you need your stitch on hold cables, which I'll talk about more, because it makes it really easy to try on as you go. And depending on your body shape is where you should do your increases. So I'm quite flat through the front, but I'm quite curvy in the hips and the bottom. So what I did with my 4 stitch increase is I did one at this end, one at this end, and then I divided my bottom, and it's almost like darts. So I did 1 increase down here and 1 increase down there where those pins are. So it's given me more fabric around the back where I need it, and just so I'm flat through the front. So it's worked out really well. So if you've never knitted a skirt before and you've always wanted to, give this a go. The yarn that I've used is a 70 or 80% wool, 20% acrylic. I don't normally knit with acrylic, but I didn't want anything that was going to drape or go baggy around my bottom when I sat down. So that's why I've gone with something with a bit of acrylic. I'm hoping it'll give it a bit more structure. And I've also done quite a tight gauge. So this is a DK weight yarn, and I've used a 3.5mm needle, which is quite a dense, the fabric's quite dense. It's not light and airy, but it's what I wanted. So yeah, my advice would be definitely do a swatch. Choose your yarn quite carefully because you don't want anything that's going to be drapey or stretchy. And make sure you've got a set of cables to try it on in regular intervals, because you certainly don't want to do all this knitting to find out that it's just too tight or too loose around your bottom or around your hips. Yeah, so that's my advice. Try it on regularly, do a dense gauge, choose your yarn carefully. And I have double folded my band, so I don't know if you're going to be able to see it there. I knitted the band, then did 1 purl, then rolled it back on itself. So the band has a hem, and in that hem I have left an opening, and I'm going to thread through some elastic. I've got an opening there, yeah. So I have bought my elastic. It's about a 1 inch wide elastic, so I'm going to thread that through. The recommendation is to do your elastic a good inch smaller than your waist, so it's got a bit of stretch. So next time I see you, I should be wearing this. I'm really excited for it. It's my first skirt that I've ever knitted. I would recommend it if you haven't done it and you want to do it. The length's just above the knee, so it's not too short, and I plan on wearing it with black tights and either long boots or ankle boots. and I just think it's going to be a really neat little addition to my winter wardrobe. So thank you, Selma, for that pattern. And like she says, it's not a pattern, it's actually a recipe, and you pretty well work out your own formula to fit you. So because we're all so different, like from the waist to the hips, and then even from the hips down to the knees, we're all so different. So yeah, I think that's all I needed to say about that. Yeah, try it on as you go. I am just going to insert a photo for you of my Ranunculus. I should have done this before when I was talking about it, but I did just get my daughter to take a photo of me wearing it, just so you can see the fit. So I'll just quickly insert that photo so you can have a look at the completed object. Okay. My next work in progress WIP that I have been working on is this one by Isabel Kramer. Fiola, not good on pronunciations, but that's it there. I love that detail down the sleeve, and that's what really drew me to this pattern, was the actual the detail in the sleeve. So last time I showed you I was working through the yoke, and I did pick it up. It was my goal to get some more work done on this, but I have divided for the sleeve. You can see the lace work there. Hold that out. And that's going to run down the whole length of the sleeve. I'm really happy with that. I love, I think it's called like a faux seam, this raglan faux seam that you create. Bit of lace work in the V there at the front, and there will be a collar, some ribbing around that neckline. But I have just divided for the sleeves, and now it's just knitting straight. So I will really hope to get some work done on this. I do tend to get to this point and do my sleeves before I continue working on the body. It's just my preference. I think number one, it avoids being stuck on Sleeve Island, but also when you're working in small circumference, it's not so much bulk that you're dealing with. So I do tend to do the sleeves at this point, and then I just pin the sleeves so they're out of the way, and then work down on the body. So it's probably what I'll do is I'll probably just pick up the sleeves now and work on those. I'm doing this on a 3.75mm needle. And there's not a lot to say about the yarn. It's a UK yarn that I bought last year. I bought a couple of cones, and they say it's a 5-ply Guernsey yarn. It's not a super soft fluffy yarn. I think it's quite a strong yarn, but it's still soft to the skin. My swatch washed up a lot softer than this. So when you buy yarn in a cone, it generally has spinning oil on it. So it does feel a little bit coarser to work with, but once you wash it and block it, it softens up a whole lot. So if you've knitted with cones, you'll know what I mean. And I will talk more about that because so the Jamison and Smith yarn that I've got coming in for my online store, I have ordered some cones for you. So that's really exciting. The other thing I thought I would mention on this topic is I'm starting to see more and more patterns, especially from overseas, like America. Andrea Mowry is a good example, and a lot of her patterns call for 5-ply. But here in New Zealand, we don't have a lot of 5-ply yarn. It's not... I don't know, we tend to have fingering weight and then DK weight, but quite often your fingering weight, you can get a heavier fingering weight or a finer fingering weight. So I quite often will substitute if the pattern says a 5-ply, I'll use a 4-ply. And I do swatch and I just see if I get gauge, and quite often I just get gauge using 4-ply. So I thought I would just mention that. So if you are in the Southern Hemisphere, New Zealand, Australia, and you don't get put off by patterns that say 5-ply, just do a swatch and you can generally you can generally get away with a 4-ply. And I know with this Jamieson and Smith that I've got coming in, it's a 4-ply fingering weight yarn, but you could certainly use that for a pattern that called for a 5-ply. Just play with your gauge a little bit. But maybe I'll talk a bit more on that at another point, because I have got a pattern that I want to cast on soon, and it does say 5-ply, but I'm actually going to be using 4-ply. So I kind of feel like I'm just rambling a whole lot today. I hope it's making sense, and I hope that I'm not boring you too much. Yeah, so that's my Fiola by Isabel Kramer, and they are my two main work in progress. I have not done any of my Marie Wallen, which makes me a bit sad because I really want to get stuck into it. And I haven't made any progress on my socks, which is not unusual. That's okay. But I have cast on something new. So when I finish my Ranunculus, pretty well, as soon as I'm on that band, that's it. I give myself permission to cast on something new. So I did, and I'll show it to you. So I really want to start doing some more colour work, because I want to talk about Jamieson and Smith, the yarn that's coming in, and just give you some ideas and encourage you to do colour work if you haven't done much colour work. So I have literally just cast this on a couple of nights ago, and all I've done is the band, and I've just started a bit of the colour work. Now, it's fingering weight, and I've talked about this before, but it's really worth talking about again. So one of the patterns that I'm using, it has come out of the Strange Brew. Yeah. Strange Brew by Tin Can Knits. Now this is an ebook that you can buy on Ravelry, and it has 9 patterns. I hope I haven't lost that. I'm going to try to show you, but I've got a feeling the glare may prevent me. Anyway, so there's 9 patterns there, all with colourwork yokes. Now these 9 patterns in this Strange Brew book, it's, once again, I think they call it a recipe. There's 9 patterns. The age starts from 6-month-old child right through to a men's XXL. So the spectrum of sizing is amazing. This is literally for the whole family, grandkids right through to the big men in your life. So there's 9 patterns, the full size range, and then it gives you the formula to do every pattern either in a fingering weight, a DK weight, or an Aran weight, or 4-ply, 8-ply, 10-ply. So there's so much opportunity with this ebook. The one I am doing, I'll have to find out what it's called. Let me see if I've got it. But I'm doing this one because I really like that all over colour work. And I've just started the yoke. Now I'm pretty sure I dug out the pattern. Let me just check. Okay, so the pattern that I'm doing is called Moraine. Is it there? There it is there in sort of some more neutral brown colours. I'm doing the blues and the greys. If you buy the pattern on its own, you can buy all the patterns individually, but they're only in DK weight. So it's a lot more economical to buy the ebook. The ebook's about 160 pages, so it's not the sort of thing that you want to go down to your local shop and print off. It'll cost you a fortune. I download mine onto Knit Companion, so I've talked about that before. I work on my patterns from Knit Companion, all the graphs and the charts, rather than from paper. So it's about 168 pages. So it gives you all of those sizes. It gives you all of the different weights of yarn that you can use. But it also gives you the option to do it top down or bottom up, depending on what you like. And then it also gives you the option, it talks a lot about the yoke, and how all of these patterns are written, I think, in a 12 stitch repeat. So you can alter the sizing quite easily, as long as you stick to those multiples of 12. And there's quite a bit of reading. For me, I had to sort of start from the beginning and read all the way through to get my head around it. And when I did that, it made perfect sense. I knew that, okay, I've done that, now I can just jump to that part of the pattern and I just work the graph. But it's really economical. If you like colour work, and if you've got little people or big people in your life that you want to do colour work jerseys for, it's a really good investment. Seriously good investment. So that's Strange Brew by Tin Can Knits, and like I said, that's the progress that I've made, which is very little. But I have started it. I am using some, I'll show you, because it's exciting. I'm using cones. Like I said, I have ordered cones in from Jamieson & Smith. Not a lot, only 4 colours, and they're 4 sort of neutral base colours. But anyway, we'll talk about that later, and you can, when the shop goes live, you can jump on and have a look. But I am knitting this from cones because I do want to start using up some of the yarn that I have already in my stash, but it's also the sort of yarn that I can talk about that we can transfer over to Jamieson & Smith. So if you are wanting to do some colour work, that's what I'm doing. I also I did want to just talk about a few patterns, colourwork patterns that I have mentioned before. But Gudrun Johnson, the Shetland Trader, that one there is called the Porty Pullover. And she does a women's version and a unisex version, so for men or women. And this is a really nice colourwork jersey that's also done in 4-ply Jamieson & Smith yarn. Gudrun Johnson is a really big supporter of yarn from the Shetland Isles, and I'll talk about that a bit more. I'm saying a lot, aren't I? Sorry. And the other 2 designers, if you were keen to do some colour work, I did a bit of research on Ravelry, and the 2 designers that I really like is Kristin Drysdale and Johanna. Kristin Drysdale, a lot of her work, I think it's Scandinavian style knitting, but she does do a couple of really nice cardigans that can be steeked, and I do want to do some more steeking work. So the ones that she had was the Marrot, which I have shown you. It was in that one there. I really want to do that one. That's in edition 7 of Liner magazine. And the other one that's worth looking up, if you want to try a bit of colour work and you want to be a wee bit adventurous, she has the Lady Catherine hat, and it's beautiful. And I only found this morning, so I haven't had a chance to print it off. But jump onto Ravelry, so it's Kristin Drysdale, and it's a Lady Catherine hat. and it looks stunning, and it's got some really amazing colour work. So if you're feeling a bit adventurous, check that one out. And Johanna, I showed you this. I think this will be an awesome first steeking project, that one. But also her budding cardigan, which I did as my first steek, is another one. But there was a jersey that she had, which I really liked, and it's called Grain. Once again, I only found these this morning, so I will leave them in my show notes. But yeah, Johanna, and the jersey was called Grain. Have a look at that one if you're keen to do. That'd be probably even a nice entry-level colour work project. So yeah, that's everything I had there. I did on my last episode, I wore my Stripes jersey by Andrea Mowry, and after wearing it that day, I decided I need another one of those in my wardrobe. And it wasn't so much the colours or the stripes, but it was the actual fit. I really like the way it fits me and the way it sits. So that was playing on my mind that I wanted to do another one. But then I thought about her, what's it called? DRK Everyday Sweater. And I thought it looks like it's pretty similar construction to the Stripes, but she refers to it a lot as being a really good wardrobe staple. Like, she loves it and she talks about it, and I know people that have done one often do a second or a third one because they're just a really good staple in their wardrobe. Yeah, and I wrote that note down because I thought what it was is I have ended up in my stash with some spin cycle, but I've also got 2 skeins that have been hand spun that I have shown you in earlier podcasts. And I think that I could combine this with the spin cycle, and I think I'm going to use these for the Andrea Mowry DRK, just for another wardrobe. I think you'd call it a wardrobe staple. I know she talks about it as being a really easy to wear everyday jersey. So yeah, that's the other thing that's just popped into my head. That's I've written it in my notes because I do want to do it. So it was like, do I do another Stripes? And then I thought, well, no, I'll try something new and I'll do the DRK. Yeah, Renee, yeah, I'll do the DRK sweater. She does say in that pattern, this is once again referring back to 5-ply. And like I said, we don't really have 5-ply, but I will do a swatch, and it's a 21 stitch gauge, so I'm pretty sure I can manage that with that yarn that I've got. So maybe I'll cast that on when I see you again next time. I'm not sure. Just to recap too, if you're in New Zealand, the 3 dates for our wool festivals, I just thought I'd mention again. Auckland is Saturday the 28th of May, and then here in Christchurch is Sunday the 19th of June, and I'm going to be there. I'm going to have a table at that wool festival, and I'm going to have my Jamison and Smith, but I'm also going to have some other accessories and bits and bobs. So if you come into the Christchurch one, come and say hello. And then there's one in Wellington, which is the 2nd of July. So Wellington, 2nd of July, Christchurch, Sunday the 19th of June, and Auckland, the 28th of May. And I will put those dates on my show notes. So I've only been to a couple. I was really going to try to get to the Auckland one, and a friend that I was going to go with can't make it, and I would have gone had it not been so far away from the airport, but my understanding is it's a good hour or hour and a half away from the airport. So my plan was to fly in the morning, go to the festival, take a little carry-on bag, shop and then fly home that evening. But it is quite away from the airport, so I think I'm going to give it a miss. So yeah, there are all festivals. The other thing too, I often talk about other podcasts that I watch. Little Big Knits is one, Knitting Traditions, which is Inga. But the other one that I've been watching a lot and I really enjoy is Needles at the Ready. And that's Kevin and Ray, two boys. They're from America. I'm not sure what part of America they're from. But if you're looking for a new podcast to watch that's informative, it's entertaining, have a look at that one. Needles at the Ready. It's quite good. Where am I? So I did want to just quickly talk about the yarn that I'm getting, which is Jamieson and Smith. So just because I have been asked, well, Lisa, what's so special about this wool? Why is this wool? Why would you bring this wool into New Zealand? So the short answer is it's really quite a special yarn. It is yarn that's been produced for, I think, quite a few hundreds of years. The sheep are all bred and raised for the Shetland Islands and for those conditions. So the Shetland Islands have really wet and cold and windy weather conditions, and these sheep are sort of bred for that. But also, and I'm referring to like New Zealand and Australia, we have merino and sheep farms where they have like 10,000 head of sheep, and they're out in the high country, and that, you know, that, like, we're talking big scale. Where on the Shetland Islands, they have what's called crofts and crofters. And a crofter is often one person that looks after their croft. And some of these crofts may only have 80 or 100 sheep. And in some cases, they all have names and they know them by name. And because of the climate, they have to be fed out, like every day they have to be hand fed because they don't grow a lot of just natural, you know, I think they have a lot of bog and mud. So it's quite unique the way these sheep are bred, but also Jamieson and Smith buy 80% of the yarn that is produced on the Shetland Islands, and they pay a fair price for the wool. And all of that money goes back into the economy of the Shetland Isles. So they're producing amazing wool. It's renowned for being strong, but it's also soft and it's also very warm. So you're supporting small communities that's been their way of life for hundreds of years, and they're still farming these sheep the way that they were generations before. And Jamieson and Smith are still buying the wool, and Jamieson and Smith has been like a family-owned mill that's been putting all this money back into their economy and enabling them to continue this tradition. I hope I'm making sense with all of that. It's worth going on to their website and having a wee bit of a read. But the wool is really quite special in the sense that it is strong, but it's also soft and it's durable and it's warm. And it's ideal for colour work, and that's why I talk a lot about colour work, because it's a nice fingering weight yarn. It's grippy, and it's just worth giving it a go. And I have been asked, well, how much will it be? So, of course, I've got to bring it in, and there's freight and there's taxes and all that sort of thing. So a 25 gram ball is going to be $9. So I thought I just would give you a comparison. So 4 balls will cost you $36, and that will give you 460 metres. So there's 115 metres per ball. And I thought, well, that's pretty reasonable, because I know that we've all bought like indie dyed yarn, which is 400 metres, and we've probably paid close to $40 or $42 for 400 grams of indie dyed yarn. So I think price wise, it's really compatible to what most of us would pay for a fingering weight indie dyed yarn or similar. Yeah, so that was yeah, I just wanted to touch on that, but I just can't wait to get it. It's in the country, and my understanding is actually in customs at the moment in Christchurch. So the date of delivery should be Monday. So and also I've got someone working on my website and my online store. So hopefully it's all going to come together next week. So keep an eye on my Instagram, because I will put announcements on there about when we're going to open the online store and when we're going to go live. And the other thing I've been really busy doing is I've been making stitch markers, and I'm doing this because it's a whole lot of fun. I love fancy stitch markers, so when I'm knitting, I very rarely settle for just a plastic ring. I like fancy stitch markers. So I wanted to make some, so yeah, I'll have those on the website as well. That's been a bit of fun and keeping me busy. But the other thing I wanted to mention too is when I go live, I've talked a lot about my stitch holding cables, and at the end of this video I've done a couple of demos. So if you don't know about these yet, or you're still not sure and whether you want to try them, stay on until the end of this video and I'll show the demos that I've done, because what I've done now is I've got the small and the large cables. So the small being from 2.5 to about a 4mm needle, and then the large is from a 4.5 up to about a 6 or 7mm needle. So I've done the demos, but I've managed to get some yellow and blue cable. Now it's not the right yellow and blue, it's the closest I could get, but I've got this yellow and blue cable, and I've got 36 of these. When I go live with my online store, I'm going to sell these. They retail for $20. So you can buy them at some stores. I know that Yarn Floozy in Auckland has them, the Knitting Truck in Auckland, and Willoughby's and Hands in Christchurch have been selling my small cables. But I'm going to have these on my online store for $20, and the 36 of these blue and yellow ones, I'm going to donate $5 for each one to the Red Cross for the Ukraine appeal, to help out over there, because I know that if we all just do a little bit, you know, I think I worked out it's only $180, but if we all do a little bit, it mounts up into one really big bit. So I just thought I'd mention those. When you do jump onto my online store, if you see these, know that $5 from each one is going to go to the Red Cross. And I think that's all. I think I'm all done and dusted today. I feel like I've kind of rambled on a lot. I think I've covered everything. I hope it's been informative. And I think that's all. I want to thank you again for viewing, for staying on and watching. Thank you to everyone that has subscribed, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram and our Ravelry community page, and yeah, and stay tuned for those demos. If you want to see how those cables work, I will insert a small demo video, and that's all. So stay happy, everyone, stay healthy, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you. Thanks for viewing. Happy knitting, everyone. Bye. Hello. I'm just going to demonstrate the use of my stitch holding cables, how they work. These are the small cables, and I recommend these for a needle 2.5 up to about a 4mm. The needles I've got at the moment are a 3.5, but I have used these small cables on a 2.5. So I just want to demonstrate how quickly and efficiently they do work. So I've got the 1.5 metre length cable here. I've just pushed that onto the tip of my needle. What I'm knitting here is a bralette by Jessie Maid, and I just want to try the length of this singlet on before I go any further. So what I've done here is I've put the cable, and then I'm just going to work all those stitches from the knitting needle, sorry, onto this pink cable. I'm hoping you can see there. They move across really smoothly. Occasionally you just have to lift one that may just get caught on the ridge. These are such a useful tool to have in your knitting bag for any project. They're just such a game changer. It just means that you can try your garments on a lot more often, because it's just so quick and easy to do. So I'm nearly there. The cables come in two lengths, a 1.5 metre. You get two of the 1.5 and two of the 1 metre, and I recommend the 1 metre for sleeves. They work really well when you have to, if you're knitting a top-down garment and you have to put your stitches on hold, your sleeve stitches on hold. They're really good for that. Okay, so I've worked all of that through onto the cable. Just going to take my needle off, push all of those stitches around. Make sure you've got a long tail at each end so you don't lose any stitches. But that's now ready for me to try on, and those stitches are not going to go anywhere. And I will try that on, and then I will come back and I will demonstrate for you how easy it is to get them from the cable back onto the needle to continue knitting. Okay, so I finished trying on my garment, and I now want to get my stitches back onto my needles to continue knitting. So I've just placed the end of the cable onto the end of the needle, and like before, it's just a matter of pushing those stitches around to the needle and working them from the cable back onto the needle. Like I said, I've done these cables now. They're available in two sizes. So the small cable is suitable for probably a 2.5 needle up to about a 4. And then the large cable I would recommend for anything from a 4.5mm needle up to a 6, even a 7mm. Okay. Sometimes you've got to give them a little bit of a push. And it really does depend on the yarn. Some yarns are a little bit stickier than others, and some are a lot sleeker than others, and some just slide across really effortlessly. But occasionally you'll get one that's a little bit sticky. And I think too, if your gauge is quite tight and your stitches are quite tight, they can be a little bit tricky, but they get there in the end. And it even with sticky stitches or tight gauge stitches, it's a lot faster than putting them onto waste yarn. Some of these have been a little bit sticky. So the actual cable itself isn't sleek and shiny, and the reason for that is when you've got the cable holding all of your stitches, you don't want them to slide off the cable. So that's why I've gone with a cable that it's actually silicone. It's not super shiny and super slippery. Nearly there. The other great thing about having these cables is, if you're like me and you have cast-on-itis every now and then and you just need to cast on something new but you haven't got a spare set of needles in your kit, It's really quick and easy just to put your stitches on a cable and use those needles for another project. But that's the small. You get 2 of the 1 metre and 2 of the 1.5 metre, and they are available on my website. So I hope you enjoyed that little demonstration. I'll see you soon. Bye. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate how easy and quickly it is to take your knitting from the needles onto a stitch holding cable to allow you to try it on. What I'm using is the large cables because I'm using larger needles with a DK weight wool. So I'm doing this on a 5mm needle. On the body I used a 6mm needle and I used the same cable. So the cable comes in 2 sizes, a small and a large, and I'll demonstrate both. With the large cable I would recommend anything from maybe a 4 to a 4.5mm needle up to a 6, even a 6.5. So I'm just pushing that cable onto the end of the needle really quite firmly so it doesn't move, and then I'm just going to feed my stitches off the needle and onto the cable. Sometimes the odd stitch may stick and it may need a little bit of help feeding it across, but generally they feed across really easily. So this is a bigger project with a couple of 100 stitches, and you can see how quickly I'm getting those from the needle onto the cable. Nearly there. Like I said, occasionally one may stick at the ridge, and it's just a matter of lifting them and working them over that little ridge. Okay, so I'm just going to push all those stitches around. This is a 1.5 metre length cable, so you've got lots of room to play with. The one thing I will say is when you take your cable off your needle, it forms a bit of a suction and it's on there quite tightly, and if you just try to pull it, you're going to distort the shape of your cable. So what I recommend is just to get your needle underneath, sorry, not your needle, your fingernail, and work it off with your fingernail. Okay, so in about 2.5 minutes, I've managed to get all those stitches onto this cable, and it's now ready for me to try on. The cables don't need to be fastened at all. So with that 1.5 metres, there's plenty of cable left, and those stitches won't come off. The cable's quite grippy and they're secure there. So what I'm going to do now is try this on to make sure I'm happy with the overall length, and then I'll come back and show you just how quickly and easy it is to get these stitches from my cables back onto my needles so that I can cast it off. Okay, I've tried it's my Ranunculus. I've tried it on and I'm really happy with the length, so I want to put the stitches from the cable back onto the needle, ready to cast off. For the couple of minutes this takes, it's such a it's just such a worthy thing to do, just to make sure that you're happy with the overall length. Okay, so once again I'm going to slide that cable onto the end of my needle. It's nice and tight, and I'm just going to push all these stitches off that cable and onto my needle. Now the really good thing with this exercise also is that all the stitches go back onto the needle the correct way. So with the old method, when I used to use a like a darning needle and a piece of waste yarn, and I used to put all my stitches through a piece of waste yarn. When I'd put them back onto my needle, for some reason they would always go on in the wrong direction. So the first round of knitting meant that you always had to knit into the back of your stitch to turn your stitches back around. I'm sure most of you will know what I'm talking about. But as you can see, they're going from the cable back onto that needle really, really easily. Once again, I'm just going to get my fingernail under there to take it off. And it's done. I'm now ready to continue knitting or ready to cast off. I will demonstrate this again on the smaller cables using a smaller needle with a fingering weight yarn, just so you can see how they both work just so efficiently and so easily. Thank you.